I'm a good friend also of Joanne Roberts, whom you know well. So from the island, and we love it. We love our common home, and we are so happy to have you here. I know students have prepared lots of questions for you, and these are critical thinking questions. They've been taking time to prepare and to ask you things that really matter to them. And I'm looking forward to your answers, of course. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and thank you to your team as well.
Merci, c'est bon de vous voir
Ah,
aussi.
très bien.
Merci.
Enchanté. Allez-y, les élèves, nous sommes prêts?
Simone Manescu in Montreal. You guys are here.
Bienvenue.
I'm just going to acknowledge territory where I am. Je veux dire quelque chose de très
Oui,
court.
please,
Oui.
please.
Parce que je parle je suis ici dans le territoire traditionnel des peuples Wasanak. C'est le nom de la nation autochtone ici, Wasanak. And the name of my electoral district, Saanich Gulf Islands, Saanich Peninsula, is a mispronunciation by settler people of the name Wasanak, which is the nation. And the tradition in this territory, c'est la façon traditionnelle pour accueillir, c'est de lever les mains. Et I raise my hands to you and say, Haishka, Haishka Siam. And that language is called Senchothan. C'est la langue autochtone qui s'appelle Senchothan. Et je veux dire seulement merci, c'est un honneur d'être avec tout le monde. Haishka Siam. So with that, I've acknowledged my territory, and any questions, I'm ready for any school.
Wonderful. Teachers, if your students are muted and you need to get me to unmute a student, tell me the name and I'll unmute. Alors, les enseignants, si vous avez un élève qui veut poser la question, vous me dites le nom, je vais leur permettre de poser la question. C'est Simone Manescu. Est-ce que vous êtes là?
Oui.
OK.
Bienvenue, madame. Cette question parle de votre vie. Can you tell us about your life growing up? How did you manage to get elected as leader of the Green Party? And as a woman, did you find it more difficult to fight for this position?
Wow, c'est une question tellement. C'est trois questions dans une question. Et je sais que nous n'avons pas beaucoup de temps, mais je fais l'effort de faire une réponse très, très vite. Dans mon jeunesse, je suis née aux États-Unis, dans les États-Unis, and I had a childhood, just such a pleasant childhood in the countryside. My family lived where we had 7 acres, lots of space. We had lots of animals. I had chickens to look after and sheep and ponies. It's a childhood that brought me very close to nature. And when I was a teenager, my parents moved to Cape Breton. Toute la famille, nous avons déménagé à Cap-Breton, île de Cap-Breton, dans la province Nouvelle-Écosse. And that was a big change. So, but all my life, like from when I was in grade 10, I knew for sure I wanted to do environmental work. I knew for sure I wanted to be an environmental lawyer. I didn't know I wanted to be a member of parliament. I just wanted to protect nature. So that's how I grew up. That's what I did with my life. And when there was a leadership race for the Green Party leader that was starting in the fall of 2005, the person who was leader of the Green Party then was named Jim Harris, and he asked me if I would consider running. At that time, I had been executive director of a national environmental group. J'avais travaillé dans le mouvement écolo il y a des décennies. For decades, I'd worked in the environmental movement, and they asked me to leave that and run for leader of the Green Party. How I happened to get elected, it wasn't easy. It was a very competitive leadership race. La course à la chefferie du Parti vert du Canada, ce n'est pas facile. Je suis la seule femme dans cette course à la chefferie. Je pense que c'est un peu plus difficile, mais enfin, j'ai gagné la chefferie. So I do think life in politics is harder for women in general, but I became leader of the Green Party in 2006, and I stepped down just a year ago, 2019. Merci beaucoup.
Fantastique. Bravo les élèves.
If you would have been elected as Prime Minister of Canada, what would you have done first for the country?
Wow. First, so much. I obviously, climate change is my biggest priority. L'urgence de changement climatique, c'est mon prioritaire. C'est un enjeu primordial. On doit agir. So that's the first thing I would have taken action. But I also want to improve. I'd love to see a guaranteed livable income to eliminate poverty in Canada. There's a lot of work to be done with reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and our voting system is a very poor one. So I'd like to reform our voting system. So I'd be very busy, and I wish I had become Prime Minister, but I'm still working in Parliament, and I'm still hoping to make changes in all those things.
Cette question est à propos de la santé des jeunes. COVID is raging as we await the incoming vaccine. For this holiday period, do you have advice for all people, and especially young people who may be a bit depressed, or whose emotional or mental health may be suffering from the lack of social interaction due to COVID-19?
Oui, c'est une question tellement importante pour tous les gens du Canada, les aînés, puis aussi les jeunes. I have a lot of concerns for how we're all getting through this. It's not at all fun, right? It's awful. You guys have masks. Sometime you don't have any school at all. My daughter is a new young teacher, and it's hard for all of you who are teachers. I thank you so much for your work. I think the most important thing in mental health is to talk to people. So if you're feeling depressed, tell somebody. And tell your family, talk to a teacher. You could even tell your member of parliament. You have to find someone you can talk to say, I'm really struggling with this. I'm not feeling good. I'd also suggest a project, something that you think of for yourself that motivates you. So, working from home as we are, what could you do pour trouver un nouveau, ce n'est pas le mot hobby que je cherche, mais quelque chose où c'est possible de devenir expert sur un sujet. So do your research. Decide you want to know everything there is to know about. Could be a hockey player, could be a composer of a symphony, could be, I don't know how many of you saw the Handel's Messiah performed across Canada. Find out everything you ever wanted to know. Maybe you never thought you wanted to know anything about Handel, but you know, dig in. Or maybe decide you want to learn how to cook something special, work in the kitchen. There's things you can do at home that give you a project, because being stuck and isolated and separated from friends is really hard. Obviously, we have phones, we have things like this device, this Microsoft Teams, we have Skype. Stay connected with friends and tell someone if you're having a hard time. Parlez avec vos proches.
Thank you.
Merci.
C'est important d'avoir de la passion avec ce qu'on fait. Alors, je pense qu'ils peuvent trouver quelque chose qu'ils sont bien passionnés de faire. Et c'est une très bonne idée. C'est ça, c'est une très bonne idée.
Trouver les livres pour lire tous les livres dans un grand, qu'est-ce que c'est le mot, un thème. Lire tous les livres de Tolkien, par exemple, ou de Tolstoy. Find an author you want to dig into and read everything she wrote. It'll gives you a new groove, and that's an old phrase. That's probably wrong.
Très bien dit, merci.
L'école La Ruche à Magog, Québec.
Oh, Magog, tellement beau ville, tellement belle région.
Alors, il y a le micro de Laurie à allumer.
Oui, Laurie, attendez.
Laurie Bernier.
Ce sera pas long. Essayez, Laurie, ça dit que vous êtes
Allô, tu m'entends?
Allez-y. Oui, on vous entend.
Donc, bonjour, Madame May. Nous, on aimerait savoir, que pensez-vous de notre génération?
Oh, votre génération, pour moi, m'inspire. Votre génération, c'est l'espoir d'humanité. So your generation is smart, connected, thoughtful. Et aussi, j'ai beaucoup d'inquiétudes pour l'avenir et pour tout le monde dans votre génération parce qu'il y a un fardeau de connaissance les problèmes, les menaces. Mais je pense qu'avec, c'est pour nous, dans ma génération, de travailler plus fort pour réduire les menaces avant le moment quand vous avez le pouvoir sur la société. Mais je veux dire aussi que vous avez le pouvoir maintenant. Ce n'est pas nécessaire d'avoir l'âge de 18 ans de voter. Your generation, each one of you has power now because you're able to speak out. Social media is a two-edged sword. I think a lot of it is negative, but the ability to speak out, to organize. I know the Fridays for the Future groups are working, even in COVID, to try to create social pressure, social movements. So I have all the respect in the world for your generation, but I'm not going to say it's up to you. We have our generation, my generation of old people, we've got to do a whole lot more before we die, basically, so that your generation is safe. And I'm committed to do that.
Merci, Madame May. Il y a Antoine Palacio.
Oui, je le vois. Vas-y, Antoine.
Allô?
Oui, allez-y.
Comment voyez-vous le Québec, Madame May?
Oh, j'adore Québec. Pour moi, j'adore parler en français. Je sais que j'ai fait les fautes, mais c'est une passion, comme vous avez dit. C'est une question de volonté de parler plus en français. Pour moi, c'est un peu difficile parce qu'ici, dans l'île de Vancouver, sur le sud de l'île de Vancouver, ici en Colombie-Britannique, c'est pas facile de trouver les occasions pour pratiquer. Mais comme députée, j'ai toujours le droit de parler dans les deux langues officielles dans le Parlement du Canada. J'adore Québec comme une province. J'adore Québec pour la culture, pour la cuisine, pour les expériences touristiques dans les régions comme à Magog aussi. Ville de Québec, c'est mon ville favorite dans tout le monde parce que c'est comme une petite pièce d'Europe ici au Canada. Et je pense que la volonté des Québécois et Québécoises, la volonté écolo, c'est très fort. C'est pour ça que j'apprécie, je dis merci pour les peuples de Québec pour leur leadership.
Très bien.
Merci, Antoine.
Merci.
Guardian Angels Elementary School in Stittsville, Ontario will now ask questions. Oui.
Yep, go ahead. Just a second.
Nous allons discuter de threat dans le monde. We would like to ask about the Green Party's views on women. What are human rights and why are women and youth especially targeted when it comes to human rights? Why should we be especially protective of women and young people?
C'est une question très importante pour moi, comme le seul chef qui est aussi une femme. Il y a entre 2006 et 2019, j'étais la seule femme dans le monde politique au niveau des chefs. Pour moi, c'est incroyable depuis tout ce temps. Et maintenant encore, la personne qui maintenant est le chef du Parti vert du Canada, c'est une femme tellement impressionnée, Annemie Paul, et aussi la première personne noire qui est devenue un chef d'un parti au niveau fédéral. So Annemie Paul is the first Black person to lead a federal political party. She's also the first Black woman to lead a Canadian political party. So the women in the Green Party, Annemie Paul is the 11th leader, counting our friend Joanne Roberts, who was interim leader. And it's been, I think at this point, there were 6 women leaders and 5 male leaders. And right now in Parliament, there are 3 Green members of Parliament. We're the first party to ever have more women than men in our federal caucus. C'est tellement petit, c'est 3 personnes, mais c'est 2 femmes, parce que Jenica Atwin de Fredericton, puis Paul Manley de Nanaimo Ladysmith. And why is it important? Women are half the population of the country, but play a very small role in decisions. We make it at the federal level, which is very worrying. But the cabinet, I want to give credit to Justin Trudeau. It's important that the cabinet is half women. It's important that we have the first ever woman who is a minister of finance. We right now have 100 women in the Parliament of Canada, and we were just celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Royal Commission on the Status of Women that reported to Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, in 1970. And in 1970, when the report was tabled, there was 1 woman member of parliament. Now there's 100. So I said on that day, we should be able to do 100 times more than what happened for women in the past. That's not the case yet. We're not doing 100 times more, but we should try. Women's rights are part of human rights. Indigenous peoples have the same human rights. Children have human rights. And respect for human rights means we have to make sure that every single one of us is respected all the time.
Cette question discute de justice sociale. Our name is Young Global Citizens. Recently, we spoke to Senator Mobina S.V. Jaffer, who committed to writing to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about providing water to all First Nations reserves who do not have access to clean water. What is your message on social justice and equality for all Canadians, especially regarding First Nations, Inuit people, and Canadian minorities?
Merci pour la question. C'est vraiment important de parler de la justice sociale. Je vais pas dire beaucoup au sujet du Parti vert, mais le Parti vert du Canada, c'est une partie d'un mouvement mondial. En anglais, on dit Global Greens, les Verts mondiaux. Et chaque parti des Verts, partout au monde, et aussi ici au Canada, partage les mêmes valeurs. So we have 6 global green values. And of course, one of them is ecological sustainability. But one of them, of course, is respect for human rights. And one of them is social justice, which means eliminating poverty, making sure that life is fair, and that I think a country as wealthy as Canada, and the Green Party has fought for this from before I was involved, that we should eliminate poverty in Canada because we can afford to do it. On the question of Indigenous rights, we are a country that is based on having stolen the land of other peoples. There's no way around it. That's why settler culture people hundreds of years ago, the first ones here just stole the land. And they called it, they gave it a high flying name for theft. The high flying name for theft is called the doctrine of discovery. We found it. You thought it was yours? You were wrong. We're taking it. So that's how colonialism works. That's how settler culture people took the land. And some for Indigenous people had treaties, others didn't. But we agreed when we took the land way back that things would be fair. And the federal government took over putting Indigenous peoples into areas called reserves and said, we'll make sure you have drinking water. So the fault here is that the federal government didn't do it. And the housing is completely inadequate in many Indigenous communities. And when we talked about mental health crisis, the rate of suicides in young people in Indigenous communities, particularly in Inuit communities, is just so off the charts horrible. So we have a real obligation to get this right. I think our current Minister for Indigenous Services, those of you who are near Montreal might know Mark Miller. I like to see people as human beings, not as political parties. So I will share with you from my heart. He is such a good man. It is hurting his heart that he had to say, I take responsibility. We promised to get the clean drinking water for every community. But this is decades of neglect, and he's trying to fix it fast. It's not good enough. We have to do more. But the job of reconciliation also means respect and understanding we're in a nation to nation relationship with peoples who were here first.
Merci.
Merci, madame. Monsieur Marc-André, maintenant, c'est Maude Larivière.
Oui, allez-y, Maude. Essaie de te unmute toi-même, Maude.
Bonjour, Madame May.
Bonjour.
By the way, I love that you put your pronouns in your team names. And my question is, Ottawa vise une carboneutralité pour 2050. Selon vous, est-ce que c'est une date trop éloignée pour sauvegarder les écosystèmes?
Oui, ça aussi. Exactement, c'est vrai que c'est tellement éloigné, c'est juste 50 années. Qu'est-ce que maintenant c'est 30 années. Imaginez un cible fixe pour 30 années à référence de les niveaux de 2005. C'est une erreur grave. Et ce n'est pas seulement pour l'impact sur l'écosystème, c'est une question de humanité et la question clé, c'est est-ce que c'est possible pour la civilisation humaine de survivre l'urgence climatique? Maintenant, c'est une question ouverte. So I'd say right now, it's an open question. Will human civilization survive the next 50 to 100 years? And in order to survive, we need to do most of the work, not by 2050, but by 2030. So I'm in a bit of a conflict now with Justin Trudeau and his Minister of Environment, because picking a target of 2050 and keeping the same target for 2030 that was put in place by the previous Conservative government, the Harper target is the one we still have, and we are evading our responsibilities to act faster and more effectively by being in the world, right, compared to other countries, we're one of the worst. But most Canadians don't know that because we keep being told we're so wonderful. We are wonderful people. We have great promises, but in terms of where we stand right now in reducing our emissions and our pledges to do better, we're still one of the worst. Merci beaucoup, Maud.
Autour de Frédéric.
Essaye, Frédéric, ça devrait fonctionner. Essaie de unmute toi-même. Oui, vas-y.
Bonjour, Frédéric, maintenant. Je suis prête.
Essaye, Frédéric, on va t'entendre.
Je veux dire que c'est exactement comme ça dans le Parlement par Zoom. Toujours, chaque journée, nous avons les députés, dont 38 députés, avec peut-être 40 dans la Chambre de commune, et les autres, comme ça, dans les petites fenêtres sur l'écran. Et toujours le président de Chambre dit, I think you've got yourself on mute.
Est-ce que Frédéric, ça fonctionne? On t'a pas entendu?
Oh, maintenant, essaye.
Vas-y encore.
Oh, on ne peut pas l'entendre.
Peut-être ton enseignante va lire la question pour toi, Frédéric. Je suis désolé.
Oui.
It looks okay. Oh, the mute goes on and off on his window, but I can't hear him.
Problème de microphone.
Frédéric, en fait, voulais vous demander qu'est-ce qui vous motive dans vos actions? Vous en avez parlé un petit peu plus tôt avec votre enfance et tout ça, mais qu'est-ce qui vous motive dans votre travail?
Qu'est-ce que je fais dans mon travail?
Qu'est-ce qui vous motive? Où est-ce
What's
que
your motivation?
Yeah. Oh, oui, donc qu'est-ce que c'est mon motif? Oh, pardonnez-moi, oui, j'ai toujours, pour toute mon vie, la passion de faire une différence. C'est peut-être à cause dans ma naissance, ma jeunesse, c'est ma mère qui est aussi, elle est un bénévole, elle était bénévole, mais militant très effective. So my mother worked to stop nuclear weapons testing when I was a baby. All the other children were going around saying, don't eat the snow, don't eat yellow snow because a dog peed on it. But I'd be saying, don't eat the snow because it has radionuclides called strontium 90 and they're very dangerous, like in kindergarten, right? So dans la garderie, j'ai dit les choses conscientes et au cause de, à sujet de la pollution nucléaire. Pour moi, mon motivation, c'est toujours de faire une différence. It's a fierce motivation. I don't know where it came from. I've had it all my life, and most of my life, it's been in the direction of protecting life on Earth, human life, and all the other species.
Merci beaucoup.
Alors, nous
Merci,
avons...
Frédéric. Désolé que ton micro ne fonctionne pas.
Merci, Frédéric. Charles P. Allen High School in Halifax. Got 2 questions. Then I still have my question from Robert Val at the end. So, Charles, Cheetahs for Change, you guys.
Where's Halifax?
Oh,
That's
hello,
right.
bonjour.
I went to law school in Halifax. I used to live in Halifax. I love Halifax. J'adore Halifax.
Can you hear us all right?
Perfect.
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Alors, cette question porte sur les changements climatiques.
How can this generation help avoid a climate crisis that would devastate the Earth?
Tell your parents that it's just. I think the intergenerational dialogue is critical. That and I think Greta Thunberg, look up the video she just did on the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, and share it on your social media to as many people as you can. I mean, it's to me, I think it's astonishing that how old is she now? Maybe she's 17. She started doing this when she was 14, I think. But Greta Thunberg from Sweden is now, I regard her as a leader and not as a youth. She's the one who speaks honestly. She speaks truth to power. She tells the truth. And our generation, my generation, is stealing the future from your generation, and we should not be allowed to get away with it. So don't feel that you have to pull your punches. Write letters to the editor of newspapers. I know from living in Halifax as long as I did, you've got the Chronicle Herald. Believe it or not, writing letters to newspapers is a good way to reach politicians and other people in the older generation, as well as posting things on Facebook. But the traditional newspapers that are actually still published on paper are good places to express your views. And you can express your views without bothering to say how old you are, or you can say, I'm a student here and I'm in grade 8 and I am angry that I don't see action and my future is at stake. You can express yourself any way you want. You can express yourself, sometimes I would say, playing the youth card, to say you have a responsibility, you older people. All of us in my generation know it. I think all of us, well, maybe not Chase and Kenny, but I think all of us know it. We have to do more. And Justin Trudeau, I think, would like to do more. I think we have it's a minority parliament. If they feel that the youth of the country are actually angry with them for this month, it's their last chance to meet the Paris Agreement commitment that we would improve our target in 2020. And we're not. We're saying, well, maybe later we'll improve it a little bit. This has to be driven by the science. And I sometimes say to people, with when Dr. Teresa Tam, as a scientist, told us you have to stand 6 feet apart, we did it. But when the scientists of the world say you have to reduce emissions by about half and do it by 2030, it's as if we're saying, oh, well, okay, so we'll do like 3 feet, Teresa Tam. That's all we can give you. We'll give you the 3 feet because that's better than the other guys would give you. It's not good enough. Maintenant, c'est le moment d'exprimer avec un niveau de passion, un peu de colère peut-être, mais avec garder l'espoir parce qu'il reste possible, le temps presse. Mais nous avons le temps maintenant d'agir. On doit agir immédiatement et adapter pour Canada un cible pour réduire les gaz à effet de serre qui était honnête et qui poursuivent la vie les scientifiques dont GIEC.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Those are some great points. Et prochaine, cette question porte sur notre mouvement.
Cheetahs for Change just joined the Young Global Citizens Movement, a Vancouver youth movement founded 3 years ago. We both have similar goals on improving the earth and fighting climate change. We are both student-led. Do you have any advice for how our two movements can build a strong network and really make a difference in the world?
I love the name, Cheetahs for Change. I would, again, the networking is key. Encouraging each other, right? So it's very important when you're doing this kind of work, which I've been doing, as I said, since I was around your age. It's really important to have a support system because the issues you're dealing with are hard, right? And it's easy to get depressed, particularly if you start trying to reach other young people and they don't seem to care. I hear that a lot when I used to actually go into high schools before COVID and talk to people. I'd quite often get the question in high schools and other schools, but particularly in the high school age range, of people saying, I'm working so hard on this issue, but I can't get my classmates to care. They don't seem to care. Don't worry. It's the same in every generation. There's a lot of people my age who don't care. But movements for social change, real revolutions, happen with the majority of people still sitting on the couch wondering what just happened. So just go for it and try to network as best you can using the internet, using the Zoom channels, and try to forge statements where you can all sign on to the same thing and then send that statement to the prime minister or to the premier or to what. But it's wonderful that you're building. It's wonderful that you've discovered each other from coast to coast, literally. And if I can help, please let me know. I'm sure that the organizers can. By the way, I should have said that to all the schools. I'm always happy to try to help. And you have the contact information through the organizers of this event. I really do think that I'm an old activist, right? I'm 66 and I've been doing this a long time. So sometimes I have some good ideas and I'm always happy to try to help.
Again, thank you so much. And one last thing, did you go through Dalhousie?
Well, I don't have an undergraduate degree because my parents didn't do great financial planning when we moved to Cape Breton. So I spent my 20s waitressing and cooking in the restaurant my parents bought on the Cabot Trail. But one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me in my whole life was I went to the pub in Sydney, Cape Breton on March 8th, 1980, and I met a really drunk lawyer who said to me, you should be a lawyer. I was quite well known then as an activist. I'd worked with a whole group of people to stop budworm spraying. C'est dans un mouvement pour arrêter l'arrosage des pesticides contre les tordeuses dans les forêts de Nouvelle-Écosse. À cause de ça, j'avais un profil public un peu, et cet avocat m'a dit que c'est une bonne idée pour toi de prendre le course pour étudier le droit. Well, I said, I can't go to law school. I don't have an undergraduate degree. And she said, which was a lucky thing, don't you know? You can go to law school without an undergraduate degree. All you have to do, you're a mature student. So the next day, I called Dalhousie Law School, and they said, applications close next week. Get your application in. So I started law school September 1980 at Dalhousie Law School, which I will never call Schulich School of Law. I just did, but it's to me Dalhousie Law School. Fabulous law school. And if any of you are ever considering going to law school, I highly recommend it, Dalhousie and law in general. But I feel like it saved my life. I mean, not that it was a bad thing to be waitressing and cooking. I think waitressing and cooking is the experience of my life that best prepared me for being a member of parliament. Because you have to deal with a million things all at once. You have to keep them in your head. And even though politicians are not supposed to accept tips, that doesn't happen. Politicians don't get tips. That's my joke. But waitressing and cooking, hard work, is a good experience for anyone going into politics.
This leads into our last question. Thanks so much.
Dernière question pour vous, Marc-André.
Oui, non, mais c'est la cité étudiante de Robertval à Québec, au Québec, ma région. Alors, madame, si vous m'entendez, je pense que son nom c'est Sylvie, et l'étudiante s'appelle Rosalie.
Sylvie, bonjour.
Hi, is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, can you give a word of advice for young people like me who aspire to become politicians?
Get involved. Joignez un parti, c'est le parti avec les valeurs que vous aimez. Join any political party. Most parties have a youth wing. In the Green Party, anyone can join 14 years and up. And then when there's an election campaign, maybe for mayor, maybe for provincial parliament, legislature, volunteer, get involved, see what it's like. You can, at 18 years old, you can run. The Green Party holds the record for the youngest candidate. In the 2015 election, Cassandra Poitras, who was a candidate in the Montreal area, was 17 years old through the entire election campaign. Her 18th birthday was on election day. So Elections Canada had to give us a ruling that she was allowed to run, even though she turned 18 the day she voted for herself. So you get involved and don't let anyone discourage you, is all I would say. Are you interested, Sylvie?
It's Rosalie. I think she's very
Oh,
interested.
sorry, Rosalie. Are you interested in running? Okay, well, good luck. We need you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Madame Maikite will close the interview. And I just want to say you were hilarious, but also wise and sweet and so kind. What an honor. What a pleasure.
I have to do one more thing.
Yeah.
My dog wants to say hi to everybody.
Hi.
How
Okay,
wonderful.
Madame Maikite. Madame Maikite.
Oui, thank you. Merci beaucoup. Merci, Monsieur Tremblay, d'avoir organisé cette entrevue. And thank you, Honorable Elizabeth May, for taking this time. It was so nice to hear from your experience. And all this, you have a heart for community volunteering, and you're so passionate about what you do. And we all live in this world together. We have learned that this past year, definitely. So I hope that this really encourages people to step up and continue to work hard together to improve the world that we live in, because it takes each one of us to do so. It's really a common effort from all of us, and you've really inspired us. You've given us some food for thought, for sure.
Well, I feel my heart goes out to all of us in this. My as I said, my daughter's teaching school in the Burnaby school system, and my grandchildren are around your ages, all of you. And I just want you to know you're really loved. This is a rough, horrible time. No generation has ever gone through what you're going through right now. People being sick, people being scared, people being locked up at home, the economy being scary, the climate crisis being scary. I just want you to know that I'm sure we're all going to be okay if we look out for each other. If you see a friend struggling, reach out, make sure someone knows, take care of each other, and use your number one superpower is love. Reach out all the time and love each other as much as you can.
Thank you for that message of hope. And we wish you all the best with everything else that you're doing from now going forward too. And I think you've inspired many here to be the change they want to see in the world, and that's key for us and the members of this club. And I'm happy for École Saint-Sacrement in Vancouver, but as well for all the other schools that have joined us today. This is fantastic to see so many come together. It takes some coordination, that's for sure. But thank you so much for your time. Au revoir. Merci.
Canada, say goodbye to
Au
Madame May.
revoir tout le monde. Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir.
À la prochaine.